Morena. Tēnā koutou, te mihi tuatahi ki a noitu ahu riri te mana whenua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa I ngā tangata tiriti. Nau mai haere mai ki tēnei hui. Tēnei mātou ngā kaimahi o te kaunahira taio ki Waitaha, mā Pāngo, mā Whero ka oti te mahi, o Greg Burns tēnei, maku te Karakia. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te taonga, ki mā kina kina ki uta, ki mā taratara ki tai. Ihi aki ana te atakura, ki tio, ki huka, ki hauhu, tihei mauri ora. Morena, good morning and welcome to the first Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee meeting of the trainees. So I would like to start with a note. As you will probably know, there is an ongoing event on the Ōpāwahu Heathcote River. I just have a small piece that I'd like to read to update. So a large number of dead fish were found in the Ōpāwahu Heathcote River on Thursday, the 2nd of March, after a report coming in from a member of the community. When staff arrived at the site, it was determined that the cause of the event was likely to be a discharge incident that resulted in an unknown contaminant entering the river or storm water network. There was immediate concern that the unknown substance could be still in the water, and so public advice and notification to agencies was given. Our staff requested support from Christchurch City Council staff, who helped understand the extent and support investigation of the possible source of the incident. Water monitoring was undertaken. Fish and water samples have been collected for analysis. A cleanup to remove dead fish occurred yesterday, and ongoing monitoring to harm of wildlife continues. We want to acknowledge the actions of the community member reporting this event. We also want to assure the community that this is a priority situation and staff are continuing to work to investigate the source and cause of this incident. Thank you. Apologies. We have apologies from the Council Chair, Peter Scott, and Councillor Sunkel, who are on other council business. Do we have any other apologies? Thank you. Could I have someone? Oh, sorry. David East, of course. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Swoops. Yeah, Zone Committee. Thank you. Can I have someone please to move the apologies? Thank you, Councillor Ward. In a second. Councillor Siapu. Thank you. All those in favour? Against? Opposed? Conflicts of interest. Okay. No conflicts of interest. There are no public forums, deputations or petitions. There are no extraordinary or urgent business items. And there are no notices of motion. Likewise, there are no minutes for the Biodiversity and Biosecurity meeting because, of course, this is the first of the triennium. So could I get someone please to move that this is the first meeting of the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee, and therefore there are no prior meeting minutes to confirm. Kia ora, Councillor Cranwell, and seconded Councillor Karakia. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. Report number 8.1, which is an update to the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee's terms of reference. I'd like to invite Alex Morgan, the team leader of the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Strategy, to introduce this report. Kia ora, Alex.
Got it. Thank you for having me. I will just give you a quick brief verbal update on this paper and take it as read for the most part. I think important to note that this paper is a recommendation to Council at this stage, so the actual changes that are considered in the terms of reference that you've been presented won't take effect until such time as the Council endorses them. I believe their next session on the 22nd of March. So just to note on the recommendation that it is to endorse this as a proposal to Council to decide. We've hopefully rectified that in the terms of reference content in future. I'll just summarise some of the key changes that we've made. There's attempting to provide some clarity in the roles and responsibilities, in particular in relation to the function of this committee and the Catchment Resilience Committee, noting that elements of the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee portfolio, that being the Whakamutunga Awa Apakahi Braided River Revival Program, is reported into that Catchment Resilience Committee. So between this terms of reference and the terms of reference for that committee that you'll see later on in your committee meeting this afternoon, hopefully we've made that sort of role clarity clear. We've also added the ability for this committee to amend its own terms of reference in future, should that be required, on the proviso that this committee remains a committee of the council whole, and provided the ability to appoint members to community groups, including biosecurity advisory groups. But again, I'd note that that change will not take effect until it goes into the council session. So, I think there was a small update that will need to happen onto that paper that just relates to the date. Should council accept the changes to the terms of reference that you recommend, or should you make the recommendation to council and they indeed agree to update those terms of reference, the date on the top of that paper will need to change to the new date for the council meeting. I'm happy to take questions.
Kia ora, thank you, Alex. Are there any questions? Is that a yes, Councillor Karakia?
Yes. I just in the engagement significance and Māori participation, which are contained in the 7th of December 2012 TUI agreement, has that since 2012 has that in this committee here, has that ever been brought up as something that needs to be reviewed?
Are you referring to the specific elements within the terms of reference? Has that been? No, not that I'm aware. I believe those words are pro forma across the. If you're referring to the section of the terms of reference themselves, they're reflected across the whole terms of reference. And as to my knowledge, I don't believe that a broader conversation about whether those remain appropriate has occurred.
I just note, actually, talking to past members of this committee, both of them, that there seems to be what were the words that there seems to be a thought amongst a number of them that there is a clear mana whenua voice lacking. So I'll just make that point. Good.
Thank you for that, Councillor Karakia. Any other questions? Well, I'll put the motion, and then if anyone has something out of that, we can. So that the Biodiversity Biosecurity Committee recommends to Council that it adopts the amended terms of reference for the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee in attachment 8.1.1. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ward. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. So the chair recognises that Councillor Mackenzie has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Councillor Edge.
No real problems with the terms of reference, other than just noting that in the previous terms of reference, there was reference to this committee overseeing activities that protect, maintain and enhance priority landscapes and ecosystems across the region. And that seems to have now been removed from the specific responsibilities. And as we know, biodiversity stretches across all landscapes, and protecting and enhancing priority landscapes are pretty important. But I suppose in a way, by keeping the word habitat in there, that to some extent crosses over the broader landscape realm, if you like. So I'm happy for that, but I just wanted to note that.
Thank you, Councillor Edge. Alex, do you have any comment to make on that?
If I'm welcome to, yes, absolutely, I can comment on that. The approach we took was just to generalise the approach to sort of addressing the activities of the portfolio rather than singling out the specific elements within that portfolio that may or may not be subject to change. So hopefully in that more general wording, the specific things that we've removed is still appropriately captured. But
is that to your satisfaction, Councillor Edge? I've got a response.
Probably. I mean, I accept what you're saying, but the landscape is the broader picture of everything. So it is a general landscape within which ecology sits. But yeah, I'm fine. It's
Chair, thank you, but I'd highlight too that there is the opportunity to change the terms of reference at some stage, should that be necessary. Thank you. So we've got someone to move it. We've got someone to second. All those in favour, could you say aye, please? Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you. Alex, if you just stay there, obviously you are about to talk to the Biodiversity Biosecurity Quarterly Work Programme update. So thank you, Alex. All yours.
Thank you. Again, I'll take it as read and just provide some comments for clarity for you all. So the paper provides a summary of some recent work that's occurred in the portfolio, excluding, as before, the work of the Braided River Revival Whakamutunga program that is reported to the Catchment Resilience Committee. I believe this paper follows a sort of standard reporting format that is coming to all of the committees. It reports on some ongoing work across council within the Biodiversity and Biosecurity portfolio, and additional sort of briefings and information to council are being scheduled to come to you either through this committee or through our regular briefing schedule. So you will hear some more specific information about some of these items in the not too distant future. Some additional points of clarity are that there's a sort of $1.1 million figure referenced in paragraph 10 in the report. I'll just note that that doesn't represent the total quantum of biodiversity spend across the portfolio, but it refers to some specific spend that's been undertaken by our regional biodiversity team, and they oversee a couple of biodiversity cost codes. So that's referencing some specific operational work rather than the full quantum of biodiversity work. I'd also note that the levels of service for the 4 programs are reported in the attachment to this paper. They're just not labelled as such, so you can see levels of service 13, 14, excluding the one that's missing in that first attachment. And in order, they are the leading and partnering for biodiversity outcomes, regional pest management, priority habitats and wetlands, and the muted ARCO programs that will sit within this portfolio. So just some points of clarity, and we can look to make that clearer in future versions of this paper. So that would be it for me introducing this, but happy again to take questions.
Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I note that the Wetlands as Farm Assets program is finishing later this year. I guess my question is for this committee is, will you be reflecting on what might be investment in wetlands as a priority habitat? What are you considering that going forward? And if so, what might that look like? And you may not have an answer now, but it'd be nice to have an answer perhaps next time we have a biodiversity committee meeting.
It's probably, as those matters of ongoing funding relate to decisions that this council will need to make, certainly we'll be presenting a variety of options to this council, especially as part of your long-term plan deliberations. In the specific response to the Wetlands as Farm Assets program, I think we all noted its value. I'm not 100% sure what Landcare, who run that program's plans are to proceed with the program in the same way, shape or form as well. So I think as staff, our plan will be to liaise with that program, figure out what the approach might be in future for that and others, and then I guess provide that information to you when it's appropriate, so that you can weigh that up against the other means in which this council could support biodiversity or wetland protection. That said, there's a whole host of other things that happen within that priority habitats and wetlands program, of which that's just been one component.
Councillor Edge.
Thanks, Alex. Just clarification on page 14, item 5. there's a reference to the Biodiversity and Biosecurity portfolio, excluding Braided River Revival Program, has a total budget of 25 million. But in the annual plan, it's indicated that the Braided River Revival project is identified under Biodiversity and Biosecurity with a $4 million anticipated budget. So presumably, rather than excluding, is it including?
I believe this relates to the sort of division of responsibilities. So we've excised the Braided River Revival component from the responsibilities of this committee and pushed that into the Catchment Resilience Committee. So if the total quantum of our budget is the $25 million that's noted there, and I can just double check that, for the 2022-23 year, the total across the portfolio, including the Braided River Revival Program, is 29 or approximately $30 million. So that would be the total budget excluding the Braided River Revival Program at around that $25 million figure.
Second point, related to Councillor Mackenzie's query about habitat protection as a priority for wetlands. It's also identified in the annual plan with a $4.6 million budget. So presumably there is still some degree of prioritising wetlands and wetland habitats.
Correct. That's the direction we've received from this council, and that's why it has its own program under this budget. And as I just mentioned to Councillor Mackenzie previously, yes, that Wetlands as Farm Assets is a collaborative program, but it's only one part of what we're doing in the wetland space.
Councillor Cranmore.
Through the chair, good, Alex. Thanks for this report. Just a clarification, just on some level of service, just regards to the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy and the kind of as it's connected to the MPS, Indigenous Biodiversity by central government. Yeah, we were expecting something at the end of last year. I mean, as we're in March now already, have we kind of any clarification on when something might come through?
The only clarification I have is the stuff that's publicly available, which is what the ministry's website currently indicates, that they're still hoping it will be out sometime this year. Aside from that, no one wants the clarity of that in more than me, I can assure you. But no, we don't have a huge amount of clear information about that just yet.
Councillor Pauling.
Kia ora, Chair. Yeah, I've got three things, but I'll start with the one that links to Yane's question. So I know that we're waiting for the government to finalise the MPS for Indigenous Biodiversity, but I'm more interested in what we're doing. So we said we're going to do our revitalise the strategy, which is good, but there's a hold up in what nationally is happening. So I'm more interested in what are we doing, and if we aren't doing anything because we're waiting, are we going to reallocate the resources that we would have used for that? And if not, or if so, what are we going to do with it?
So I can answer the first part, but not the second part of that question, because what you do with your money is not something that I can. Basically, the money that we haven't spent has been highlighted as a saving, and we've reported that through our sort of finance teams. So it will be going into that sort of overs and unders that we have in terms of council budgets. We have done some background work to prepare us should we receive an MPS in future. So we've done some gap analysis work with the provisions of the current Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy and the National Policy Statement, as well as the new iteration of the Planet of the Pale, Aotearoa New Zealand Biodiversity Strategy. So we've got some steers about what's expected, but some of the mandatory requirements that we expect to come could change the nature of the way that the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy works. So that's why we've been a bit cautious to bring all of our stakeholders together to have those conversations. And but yes, as to what happens with the savings that we have across all the overspends across the organisation, that's reported into AFRC and then ultimately up to council.
Thank you. My second question is around I know you noted in your introduction there about the levels of service that are listed there. There's 13, 14, 15 and 16 and 17. That's correct on there. And so is one of them the Murudako one? What one is it?
Correct, the last one. 17, yeah.
this is particularly for new councillors, because I think the last update we got, I can't remember exactly when it was, but we understand that the YO catchment's being worked on in North Canterbury there, which is good. But I suppose I just want a little bit more detail about maybe what has actually been done since then. So it says there 11 projects have been scoped. Are they like biodiversity restoration projects on the ground? Yeah, just could you give us a little bit more, please?
I can give you what I know, which isn't exactly the 100%, but I'll note as well that this is on our list of items that we need to come back to council to talk about, not just to indicate what's going on in the Waiaufa for this year, but to look into the years ahead, and especially given the sort of increase in funding that that program expects into the coming annual plan year. Those projects are a mixture of different things. Some of them are supporting, I believe, covenanting programs. Some of them are planting. Some of them are support for community groups. I'd have to get the list specifically to know which they are. And maybe that's something that I can talk to the program lead about and bring back to council later on, if I can respond through governance with that information.
Cool, thank you, Alex. And my last one relates to, it's on page, page 18. It's about the regional biodiversity monitoring framework. So I can see there that we've done a little bit of work, and there's a paper potentially going to the Merrill Forum in Q3. Yeah, that's what it says there. I'm assuming we're going to get that first at some point as an update before it goes to the Merrill Forum.
I guess you can do. Yeah, it was more of that paper is intended to be a summary of some of the work that the science team have been undertaking. Important to note, I guess, that it's just scoping at the moment, so no decisions have been made on sort of the extent that's required under the for the monitoring framework, and the scoping element is looking at sort of the spectrum of options available. So we're just trying to, I guess, collect the information that we need to come to you and give you good advice. So that's probably what the Merrill Forum paper will indicate also, but it hasn't been prepared yet, so I don't know. The other thing I'd note is that there are also connections between that regional biodiversity monitoring stuff and the national policy statement that we haven't seen. So again, there's a bit of ambiguity in that space.
Thank you, Alex. Through the chair, Greg, I wonder if it would be a good thing to get that update at a future committee meeting. I think it's important that we get the update as well as the Merrill Forum, because otherwise we don't know and they do, or at least our chair will know, but the rest of us won't. So I'd just quite like to know that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I certainly, as a new councillor, I would like to have a look at that as well. That'd be great. Thank you, irrespective of whether I was in the chair role here. Thank you, Alex. Have you got something else to say?
Could I just follow up with that as well? That the reason it's going to the Merrill Forum is that there's a level of service tied, a target under the levels of service that's tied specifically to the Merrill Forum. So that's why you're seeing an update that says the Merrill Forum paper. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you, Alex. Very good. You can now leave the table. I will put the motion that the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee receive the work program report for the Biodiversity and Biosecurity portfolio, excluding the Braided River Revival Program, which is part to the Catchment Resilience Committee. Do I have someone to move that? Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Edge. Is there any discussion? Councillor Edge.
Thanks, Chair. Just picking up on Councillor Pauling's comments about the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy. I know there are that it's been sitting there for quite a while, and the previous biosecurity biodiversity strategies, a pretty good base document. It would be really good if perhaps you could think about establishing a small working group just to become more familiar with what's happening in that space. I just feel a little bit left in the dark, and with really no information about what's happened in the last 3 years with that particular project.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. Just as an aside, I started a conversation with Dr. Wayne McCallum, who was the original regional biodiversity coordinator at the time of the strategy being developed and taken on by Environment Canterbury in the region. And I'm hoping to sort of follow through with that as well. So he's been really If anyone knows him, he's very engaging. And certainly has some thoughts around it. But I agree. The more that we know, I think the better. Maybe some movement out of it. You, Councillor.
Just a supplementary question about the performance report or the program update. It's probably going to be something that we can't do right away, but the Audit Risk Committee is kind of interested in having a closer look at the performance of various levels of service, and in terms of descriptions, what are the projects that have actually been undertaken, what is the value and what is the progress on those. So I'm just flagging that as something that I think we need to develop a little bit more, so there's more visibility, because none of us have visibility about exactly what's happening and where and how much in some of these levels of service. So it will be good to explore that a little bit more. We'll do that through the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee, and then work closely with you as a portfolio lead to see how we can bring visibility to that.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Edge. Okay, we've got a mover and seconder, so kia ora.
Yeah, just on the biodiversity strategy stuff, I don't know if we need a working group on it, but one thing we could get is Alex mentioned the gap analysis work that's been done. Might just be good to see that as well. Again, just so some of us that are really interested in that can just understand where some of those gaps are, where the staff's thinking is at. And that might help us to settle us down a little bit in terms of what's been done. So I think that would be helpful as a first step. Yeah.
Kia ora. Probably not as eloquent, but you took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you, Councillor Pauling. So can I have all those in favour say aye, please? Those against? Kia ora. Moved. Passed. We now have a resolution to go into public excluded. So the recommendation to go into public excluded, that Emma Davis, Senior Strategy Manager, Alex Morgan, Team Leader, Strategy and Planning, Biodiversity and Biosecurity, Zoe Buxton, Senior Strategy Advisor, Biodiversity and Biosecurity, Verity Helkett, Senior Strategy Advisor, Biodiversity and Biosecurity, Rich Langley, Project Coordinator, Biosecurity, and Lawrence Smith, Principal Advisor, Biosecurity, remain after the public have been excluded for items 9.11 of the public excluded agenda. Kia ora. Can I also have Craig?
Carl Diamond.
Carl Diamond, sorry, Craig. Yeah, Carl Diamond, thank you. So can I please have someone, I presume, can I get a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Pauling. Seconder. Thank you. Genevieve, excuse me, apologies, I missed your last name for it, had a blank then. Kia ora. All in, yeah, that's right. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Moved. Thank you. So can we have the people mentioned stay, the others leave, please? Right, so we're all ready to go? Okay, I'd like to advise that the next Biodiversity and Biosecurity meeting will be held on the 2nd of August 2023. And finally, could I ask Councillor Davies to do a karakia to close?
Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te etawhai o tō tātou ariki a hihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga, tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, ake. Amen.
Amen.